There we go. I was doing that just to give everybody the heads up. So hey everyone, how's it going? Shall I turn things over to you, Barbara, to do the planning team updates and check-ins, and then I can kind of take over after that?
Sure. And because I definitely want to get us to the proposed projects at the end, hopefully we'll move through this somewhat expeditiously. So first agenda item, looking at those local approvals of the 2022-2023 annual plan of work. So Angie and Craig just did kind of a quick run through, but just as for those partners who have not been able to get that through with their boards yet, or check in with their agency or organization, please just make sure that you let Angie and Craig know when that happens. One comment that has come across from a few of the partners is the overall format of the plan of work, that large spreadsheet. A lot of partners indicated that they didn't even try to really read it because it just seemed like a very bulky deliverable that they didn't really want to dial down and read. And so in some cases, in one meeting that I was in that actually looked to approve it, the policy committee member was just like, I need you to trust me when I say everything looks good, everything is all right. And so everybody kind of was like, okay, well, I motion to approve. And so maybe even looking forward next year, looking at a way to better kind of deliver that visually. And so those partners might be able to kind of have a better experience in trying to understand what that annual plan of work looks like and what we're planning for that additional year. Did anybody have any specific comments or immediate thoughts or feedback? I just feel like this is something that we can have kind of percolating in our brains moving forward.
The only thing I would ask, and I see Susanna just put a note, if you do approve it, send both Angie and I an email. I keep a folder going for the email. So Susanna, if you'd send us an email also, I see the chat here, but if you can send me an email, that way I have to keep track of it that way. Thank you.
I was just going to agree with the fact that changing the format to make it a little easier to understand would be beneficial. I know my board members like, yeah, I'll just take your word, This looks good. The county board asked me to present it because they didn't really know. And I'm like, how do I do this? So yeah, something to think about for next year.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think if anybody wants to kind of take that time and reformat it, it was just a simple, here's what's in the plan and translating it, but you could certainly spend a lot of time and make it look really pretty and format it. And yeah, definitely welcome that if somebody has the capacity.
Any other comments? Hi, Jerry, it's good to see you. So next kind of item for the WBIF funds. So the Metro convening meeting. So I know Tom Dietrich, I don't know if Tom is on here, but I know Stephanie was on here. Yeah, there you are. And so if you want to provide an update, comment, send out an email about that to the Metro partners.
Yeah, just that the county, Washington County offered, getting a little echo. I don't know if there's somebody that's not muted. Maybe that's better. That does sound better. I don't hear myself now, which is never fun. Yeah, so Tom Dietrich, the county has offered to lead the convene process for the Metro groups. It sort of makes sense from a geographic perspective, and we were asked by a few people, so we offered to do it. So Tom Dietrich, who would normally be on this call, he's in Croatia right now, enjoying a lovely vacation. He will be sending out a message as soon as he's back, I think next week, to the eligible entities in the Metro Lower St. Croix portion. And I believe, so look for that message next week if you're in the Metro area. He'll also be contacting cities and townships. And I think the plan is to hopefully have the convene meeting or a first convene meeting take place prior to the next Lower St. Croix steering team meeting, because it's already kind of a time that's on people's calendars and just sort of makes sense. So that's the plan right now. A message will come from him next week, and then he or I will be available to answer questions. And we're kind of we looked back at what the process was last time and that sort of thing. So we'll be, sorry, my dog is barking to go outside. We'll be sending out a message, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if the goal might be to have just one meeting, if that's possible. If otherwise, there could be another meeting in July or in the summer. But I think the goal is to hopefully only have one. And now I'm going to mute myself.
Thanks, Stephanie. Does anybody have any questions or input that they wanted to provide? Yeah, Craig.
I guess my only comment would be, I just want to clarify this. This group can't move forward with our FY23 WBF grant until the Metro decides what they're going to do, correct? I mean, we're kind of holding on until that group decides what percentage of their funds they're going to share with the lower group, the whole group basin.
Matt, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Stephanie, are you thinking we do that as part of a consortium meeting?
No, not necessarily. I think if we do it prior to the next steering team meeting, it wouldn't be at a normal consortium time. But if there was need to meet again and we were coordinating calendars and schedules, then a consortium time could certainly make sense for a second meeting. I think we were hoping that people would have general availability prior to this meeting when it occurs next month, because it's what, the third Wednesday? Are we at a Wednesday right now? That was the general thought. But if there's too much unavailability or pushback, then we'll be considering, whether there's some alternative dates. And Craig, I think to answer your question, I believe that's the case, that the partnership won't know how much funding until the Metro group decides what portion or whether all of it becomes available for the partnership as a whole. Like that, I know that was the decision made last time.
Thank you.
Any additional feedback, questions from folks?
And Craig, just for your information, Jay and I we will promote combining the funds so that we can do things either north or south.
Yeah, and I can speak,
Sounds good.
I mean, it's not a secret from our county board. Our county board and Commissioner Miron are supportive of that. And that's part of what we talked to our board about just last month. So that's certainly going to be the position of Washington County as well.
Any other feedback? All right. Looking at the Lower St. Croix interactive map and the scope of work that we recently completed with Bar Engineering. Emily, did you want to give a short update on the wrap up of that process?
Yeah, I can do that. So Bar had to basically migrate the web map over to a new platform. The old one was essentially expiring, so it automatically goes, all the existing links to that interactive web map should now be going to the new upgraded map. If they don't, it could be just something in your web browser. It takes time to get updated, but it should just automatically go. They've added, I think 5, it was maybe 4 new layers that correspond with priority implementation locations from the 10-year plan, implementation plan. So those are available as well. And now we just most recently met with Angie, Barbara, and Jennifer and Bar, and kind of talking about what does the future hold for this web map, and giving the layers to staff to be able to do project targeting and such with that, and also maybe leveraging that platform, or at least those layers, to do what Angie's been doing of reporting on projects implemented. So that's my update.
Anybody have any? Oh yeah, go for it, Craig.
Emily, I did receive an invoice from Bar, so I will just do a quick review of this next day. So I'll send it to you to sign off on it also, to make sure everything's up to date.
I was just going to mention that when we talked with Bard, Jennifer had a couple of requests for additional things to be added to the map in the future, and ways for us to better do that reporting. So I don't know if you wanted to mention any of that, Jennifer, but just kind of a heads up that next summer, like right now, we have a portion of our pre-approved contract is still unspent. So we're kind of working up to that, but there's the potential that maybe next summer we'll be coming back with a small funding request if we need a little bit more to make it to the finish line with just regular web map maintenance. You want to say anything else, Jennifer? I had included, I think, as an attachment to the email, some of those new layers that you were hoping for.
Yeah. So it's really, really fantastic to have those layers for the 10-year plan, and then having the opportunity to work on the WBIF non-structural policy, the ag policy. I noticed that in the E-Link document with the different activities, there are maybe different priority areas listed in those. And so finding a way, so when anyone is planning or working to do a project for one of those WBIF activities, number one, they have to make sure it's within the priority area. And instead of having each staff independently taking the time to determine if it's in the priority area, because there's so many, and whether it's within a watershed of the stream or a watershed of the lake, etc., if we could just get those layers lumped together for each activity, then we don't have to spend everyone's individual time trying to determine that. We have a tool that we can turn those layers on, look at where a project is and determine if it's within that priority area. So that was one of my dreams. Yeah.
Any other questions? One thing that we did learn in that meeting, which was clarified for us by Bar, is that we initially were hoping that with the migration, we would be able to eventually have kind of full control of the back side, or at least allowed access to the back end of things. And so we could go in and modify shape layers and such on our own. It doesn't look like that is going to be able to happen. But we are working on one of the things we're talking about with the being able to do project mapping is being able to potentially have those layers as part of an ArcGIS that we have with the WCD, and then it actually live streams and updates that map, which would be really cool, because then it means that things update automatically. So we're looking into what that process could look like, how feasible that is. Any other questions or feedback as regards to the interactive map? All right, people are eager to move on. I love it.
Barbara, I do have just one. I just
yeah,
have one comment.
Yeah.
It's not so much against the interactive mapping, but it's our outside consultants. If you don't mind, I want to just switch gears. We are having an issue with one of our outside consultants getting the work done on a timely fashion. And our contract does not have a penalty clause in it. So I just want to make you guys aware moving forward, if we start working or have work that we're going to work with an outside consultant doing work, we need to make sure we incorporate a penalty clause in there for them, because we are months behind with EOR on some of the work they're supposed to have to us. And we keep getting the kick the can down the road. And unfortunately, our contract does not have a penalty clause in it. So I'm just letting people know that that is something I'm not worried about our partners, but as we're moving forward, working with outside consultants like BAR, EOR, other outside partners, we will want to consider that as we're developing those programs.
Well said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Greg,
the
what
next,
kind of penalty are you thinking?
oh, yeah, go for it, Matt.
Well, what we're sitting here right now is we've paid a partner for some work they've done, and they keep not providing that to us. And it could be the point where we pay for something and they never provide it to us. Now we're on the hook as the fiscal agent for that grant to provide that deliverable that we've hired an outside consultant for. So whether it's we decide not to pay until a product is delivered to us or what we're going to do, but we'll have to consider that as we're moving forward. So we were supposed to have a product to us in mid-February for the enhanced street sweeping program. It's now late May. I keep dealing with EOR trying to get that product delivered to us, and they have not. They keep assuring me it's coming, but it's been that way for 3 months. Correct, Mike?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I just want to let you guys know if we go outside the partners, watershed partners moving forward, I will be working with our attorney to make adjustments to our agreement. And as we're negotiating those contracts, and make one of those things where we just pay when it's done. I mean, EOR met the deliverable, they provided it, we could pay them. So once the deliverable is met, we could pay, but I don't think we should be paying as they're billing hours. We need to consider that anyways as we move forward.
You want me to make a phone call?
I would love it. We've been trying. If you can make a phone call and get them going, they realize the relationship is strained, at least with our organization. So I think if we can get something going, that would be great.
All right, I'll do that.
Please keep us updated.
Let's do
Thank
that.
you.
So next order of business, this one is probably going to be, that takes up a little bit more time and conversation. And so last month we had the planning committee meeting a day after the steering committee meeting, and then we had the policy committee meeting. And that steering committee meeting before the policy meeting, committee meeting, we had some pretty big conversations about how we wanted to streamline our operation, specifically in regards to project approval, make it less onerous, make it less amount of time and effort needed to work a project through the approval process. And so in the steering committee meeting, we outlined a new process. I had developed a new kind of sheet. But then at the steering committee meeting, there were actually several more suggestions that we detailed in that planning team memo that we sent out to the steering committee, essentially just a few days before the policy committee meeting, suggesting some even additional other ways to potentially streamline the process. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Cross your fingers that this is going to work, because last time it did not. Hopefully everybody can see it okay.
It's working.
Hooray, fantastic.
Yep.
So the big kind of adjustment that we made, that the planning team kind of talked about and said, this seems like a really good idea, is just this concept that we don't want our steering committee meetings only to ever be about WBIF, but also being able to look at the entire comprehensive watershed management plan, looking at priorities, talking about what different partners are doing. And so suggesting that we actually kind of take we slim it down, and so projects are only reviewed just a few times a year. And so on this new form, you have this partner filling out this project request form, self-evaluating the process. There's still kind of things that we need to talk about there and iron out. But then being able to just do this a few times a year, where the steering committee is going to review and rank these submitted project requests. This addresses one of the concerns that was brought forth by the policy committee regarding it feeling like we're doing first come, first serve sort of projects. Just they get their project application to the door, gets reviewed, but then the other one comes in that would be quote unquote higher value. And so just being able to compare projects more side by side. And then also then being able to dedicate other time at steering committee meetings for just talking about kind of overall comprehensive plan management and implementation. Generally speaking, we didn't hear any pushback from the policy committee as regards to the higher cost threshold projects and incorporating them into that process. The other thing that was talked about in the planning committee meeting that we did not really bring up with the steering committee, with the policy committee, is aside from the fact of being able to do this review only a couple times a year, but also being able to bundle projects. And so instead of Jennifer having to submit a project application for this no-till and that cover crop and this and that, being able to create a project application form that would cover multiple of those types of projects. And so that's something that needs further conversation and input by you all. So thinking through what the rest of the steering committee thinks about what the planning team proposed in terms of consolidating review for WBIF projects to a few times a year, what the schedule for that could potentially look like, and then just thoughts as people think about a bundling projects as well. So just want to open it up for folks. The graphic is here for reference. Everybody jump in all at once.
Well, I guess a specific question that I had, I can't tell if anybody has their hands up, so I hope I didn't interrupt somebody. So at today's meeting, we are reviewing 5 projects. And so we already do have, you know, a rather large bundle bundled up. And I'm wondering if we want to intentionally schedule one of our upcoming steering committee meetings, you know, July, August, September, to be another time where we're reviewing a whole bunch at once. And if so, which month would be the one that makes most sense to do that? If people know they have projects in the wings that they are expecting to be bringing forward in the near future.
Everybody's so talkative today.
I know. It's the rain. Everybody.
I'll go. This is Paul.
Yeah.
I think just from my perspective as a smaller staff partnership, we have a big field season. So doing it later, like in August or September, I'd have more availability to actually sit down and review projects than if we did it in July. Or June for that matter. That's just kind of my perspective. I have one other question about if a project's over 50,000, it goes to the policy committee. If it's below 50,000, it goes to the steering committee. Are there going to be 2 separate pots of money allocated for that? Because then we're looking at 2 different levels of project that some of these larger projects might have higher, quote, higher value because they're reducing larger phosphorus and sediment reduction. There might only be 2 projects that eat up all the funds, and these smaller projects that would have theoretically less phosphorus and sediment reduction and things like that. You may be funding less of those, or is that not something that we've considered?
It's not something we've considered, Paul, but I've had the exact same question myself, because I think you'll notice if you've looked at the 5 applications today that we have one that's rather large, and we already know that we had one that was rather large from South Washington. And so I can see that this is a topic we're going to need to figure out as a group how to address, you know, whether we fund a lot of small projects or only a couple of very large projects, or do we decide at the onset that we have a certain amount that we want to reserve for small projects?
Yeah, because I guess I'm just thinking from my point of view, if I know there's going to be 2 or 3 large projects and I have a couple good smaller projects, if all of those funds are going to be directed to those 2 or 3 larger projects, why would I even go through all this work to propose it?
Yeah, Emily.
I wonder if, you know, if we were to build in some kind of cost benefit factor into like the scoring and ranking, if that would be kind of an equalizer here. And that was kind of my question about the bundling, is if you bundle projects, is it confirmed projects where you could give a cost benefit, or is it saying, oh, we're going to do 10 projects in the sub watershed. We're not really sure which ones. We couldn't give you any details yet. But just throwing out there this idea of maybe a cost benefit of pounds of phosphorus reduced or sediment, et cetera, could be a factor to help decide.
Go for it, Craig.
I think, Emily, to answer at least the second part of your question, because I discussed that idea, I think there'd be situations where we could request funding for a watershed. So we could say we're going to use our assessment, pick off, you know, 5 of the projects in there for $50,000 or $100,000. That could be a proposal that we we would definitely, if we go that route, we'd want to put a deadline that gives us plenty of time to re-encumber those funds if we need to. But I did have the thought process that we could encumber those funds, dedicate them to a sub-watershed to try to get the work going that staff's working on.
Anybody else kind of want to jump in terms of giving thoughts about how to kind of handle the potential, this feeling of creating two tracks or addressing it and figuring out ways, and so it feels, yeah, Craig, go.
Well, I think as we're into year one of our current WWF grant, we can figure this one out going forward. But I think this is really good discussion as we're going to start building our next budget. And so when the Metro Convene Group wraps up and determines what percentage of their allocation they're going to give to the partnership, I think this is a great opportunity for this group over the next upcoming months to say, okay, we're going to spend, whether it's 100,000 on small projects and 500,000 on large projects or whatever, something along that, capital improvement type projects. I think that's something we really should continue having that discussion. And we're going to learn. I mean, as we go every year, through every biennium cycle, this process, we're going to learn what's working and what's not. And I think I like the idea. I understand where Paul's coming from, and I feel the same way. As we're going to talk about, we've talked about South Washington Water District project, and now we're talking about Comfort Lakes big project. These are good discussion items. I do think for this current round of funding, I think we continue moving forward like we've been doing, knowing that hopefully in 6-7 months, we have the next round of WBIF funds that are slated. I don't anticipate, looking at our budget, we're going to run out of funding this calendar year, unless Matt and the South Washington Water District and Comfort Lake both want to get those projects going this year. That could use up the money quickly. But I think both those projects will have to go back to the policy committee regardless for continued discussion at the PC level. Both of those would require, if we went that route, would require staff to work on work plan amendments, which would require some time frame going back to the local boards for approval also. So those two projects, they look like good projects, both of them. I don't know a lot about either one, but they're months away until those are ready for approval at the local board level. I think Emily, you and I had a good discussion about that yesterday or the other day. And I think both those are projects that have potential, but they're months away. So by then we may be looking at the next biennial budget funding that we have too. So Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so we're looking at trying to get the Trout Brook project going this fall. And then finish it up in the spring, because we have to work around ski season with Afton Alps. So hopefully that one gets off the ground this fall, kind of late summer kind of time frame. And then we're working on some ravine projects that go directly into the St. Croix, just north of Afton State Park. So we're kind of splitting those up a little bit, but I got to talk to Jay about schedule and see when he thinks we could have something pulled together.
Anybody else have feedback, thoughts? I'm really excited that we have 5 projects up for approval today. That makes me happy.
I'd had the same thought as Craig, that this seems like a question that we definitely should discuss more for the next round of WBIF grant funding. If we do kind of upfront peel off a piece that we want to have available for smaller projects and then have the rest be for the big projects, I can see something like that making a lot of sense and making it a little bit easier. Then we're not so much trying to compare grapes to watermelons. It's like, well, that's a really good grape, but yeah, I don't know, it's tricky when we don't have enough money to do everything that we would like to do, of course.
Yeah, and I would just add that, I support Craig's idea of targeted funding in specific sub watersheds, but I also agree with Emily that, like if we were to do a Clean Water Fund grant application, it would be a monetary amount and then a minimum deliverable for phosphorus TSS volume load reduction that we would anticipating to get from that amount. I think that's a process that works well and would support that as a future consideration for how we allocate funding to get some projects going in these targeted areas.
What's the process? Sorry, it was a little warbly. What's the process that you said works well?
Oh, sure. So where you're identifying projects, like a bundle of projects in a specific area, and that proposal includes a dollar amount, a minimum phosphorus TSS and volume load reduction or volume reduction numbers, so that there is a deliverable associated with the request.
Matt, did you raise your hand again, or is it still raised from before?
No, I was gonna say about small projects and stuff that, cost benefit can be really, I don't think we need to go to that detail. I think, if we're looking at phosphorus and sediment, that's probably good enough. And as far as the small projects go, I think we just fund those right away. I wouldn't necessarily support setting aside a pot of money for small projects. I would just fund the small projects, and then whatever's left over, we can begin to manipulate funds to fill big projects if we have to, or whatever's left over goes to a bigger project. But if we can get stuff on the ground, that's what we're supposed to be doing. So, let's just fund those small projects if they're ready to go. If, everything's in line, then let's fund it.
All right, I saw Craig first and then Emily.
10% cost share.
And I think that goes along lines with Matt is saying with the policy committees. I'm looking at the minutes that Angie provided for the last policy committee meeting. So you kind of look at how that meeting wrapped up. That's how the partnership members, the policy committee members, partners, they talked about that, there's interest in a big project, but they would like to make sure we focus on the small ones, recognize how, especially now with Jennifer getting up and running and going. We're going to have the enhanced street sweeping stuff coming here online, hopefully soon. They talked about, let's focus on those smaller ones and see what we can get going on that. And that it was echoed, Steve Schmaltz echoed that, Chris DeVos echoed that. There was some comments by the policy committee members. So that was their wishes also.
The clarification that I remember happening during the policy committee meeting is between small non-structural practices like the type that you would do with a farmer versus something that's more like a CIP project, but it's just a smaller CIP project. Because I know that, Steve Schmaltz, for example, will very much speak in favor of a large project with larger benefit, but then everybody recognizes the value of incentivizing behavior change and changing the social norms around farming that you get by doing these, numerous small non-structural kind of projects that Jennifer's going to be promoting. And nobody wanted to take away her ability to be able to work with farmers on those. Everybody's very clear they didn't want to do that.
Yeah, Emily.
Yeah, the only thing I just wanted to offer was something that the policy committee said that stuck with me was this aversion to, just funding projects on a first come, first served basis. And so how are we prioritizing? How are we targeting the best projects and making sure the funds are going toward those best projects? And so my answer to that, I would think, is cost benefit, but certainly there's other things. And I think just keeping that in mind is how are we making sure that these projects aren't just the first ones that are available, but they really are top priority.
Any other thoughts immediately from the group? A lot of things to kind of keep in mind.
Oh,
especially as we
one thing.
go for it.
Oh, sorry. What I do have a quick question. So for prioritizing, is that I'm assuming that it's also like prioritizing the small projects, and whether that's against the big projects or against themselves. With the small projects, we will have, most of them are management, but some of them will be conversion from row crop to non-row crop. So those might be something to consider. It might muddy the water just a little bit. But it also depends on how you look at it. You know, if we have conversion from row crop to something else, you know, we're going to have like, hooray, you know, substantial reductions. But if we have a management practice, like Barbara was saying, it's like a mind change, a management change, social change. So it does get kind of tricky on looking at the small projects and how you weigh them against each other. 2 cents.
So just a lot of things that we're keeping in mind as we continue to move forward. But glad that we were able to present a process to the policy committee that they seemed a bit more comfortable with, just in terms of being able to start increasing efficiency and building that feeling of momentum for the partnership. Anybody else want to add anything on before we turn it over to the next agenda item, which is Eric, correct? All right.
Yeah, if you're ready.
Yeah, Eric, I would say go for it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here today. My name is Eric Alms. I'm sure you all know I'm a watershed project manager with the MPCA for the East Central part of the states. And today we also have Brett Nagel, who is a fish biologist, research scientist with the PCA, who worked as the bio lead for the 2019 monitoring and assessments that took place in the Lower St. Croix watershed. So early May, we sent out a draft watershed assessments and trends update report, which was took into account the data that was collected in 2019 and 2020, as well as the previous 10 years, to kind of recap the past 10 years of water data that was collected, and also from the very first cycle that was in 2009. So if you had a chance to review it, you'll recognize that it has kind of a newer format. It's a bit shorter, it's more bridged, more concise summarization. It's only 13 pages as opposed to 165 pages. That was the previous report. But all that data, I should say, is still available. It's I'll post a link to a Tableau report that is kind of a really helpful data presentation tool that we didn't need to incorporate into a report, but we can get that later. So as Brett's presenting kind of the new draft report, just some questions to keep in mind kind of are, you know, if you recognize any gaps or missing info that you'd like us to include, please let us know. Kind of consider the messaging too of it. Does it support or conflict in some cases, the messaging from your own organization on any specific water bodies or general themes kind of, and then finally just, you know, the value of this type of report for your organization. And thanks again. I'll let Brett take over now since we have limited time.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having us here. I'll try not to bounce. I am sitting on an exercise ball as a chair, but yes, I am Brett Nagel, fish biologist with the Pollution Control Agency, and I did a lot of the biological sampling for this report in this iteration, which really was a pleasure. We do work statewide. My unit predominantly in the southern half of the state, so it really was a treat to be in the Lower St. Croix. Some really, really beautiful resources. As Eric mentioned, the new version of the report is kind of a TLDR from the cycle 1 reports that were kind of large and onerous and riddled with maps and tables. All of that information, as Eric mentioned, is still available electronically. We're going to try to be hosting things up that way in the future, and just providing these briefer versions of the report. So I don't know that all of you have had a chance to look through it. I can just kind of give you a very brief overview that for the most part, biological communities and chemical water quality are pretty similar to what they are 10 years ago, which I think is very positive news, and that and is often not the case in other watersheds at the 8-digit HUG scale. Yeah, fish and macroinvertebrate communities had a slightly higher IBI's index of biotic integrity score than they did 10 years ago. It was not statistically significant, but we are confident that things are stable. And that's not to say there weren't particular places within the watershed that maybe showed declines or improvements, just on a broad across the entire watershed scale. Predominantly seeing stability there. Since the report is briefer, I will now read it in its entirety. Please do not enter, just kidding. I know we don't have a whole lot of time here. And like Eric mentioned, we're particularly interested in anything that you saw that is maybe confusing or contrary to your own data, or any messaging you have going on. And for example, we did get a question from Mike I will just say I so I don't mispronounce your last name, about, so we mentioned Big Carnelian Lake as having an increasing trend in water clarity. That is that, you know, they've anyway, and so Mike brought up that let me see, that that their data indicate in the last 10 years that the water clarity is in fact decreasing. And so our trend data, which wasn't explicit in the report, is from 1971. So over the last 50 years, water clarity is improving, but in our own data as well, we see in the last 7 or 8 years, it is declining. And so that's, you know, as your constituents are receiving information from you all, and then, you know, Googling things and fact checking, it is, we don't want to generate confusion with conflicting information. So that's really kind of exactly the kind of feedback that is really helpful for us to clarify before this report gets published. With that, I think we could probably just turn it over to comments or questions from anybody.
Anybody have comments, questions while we have Eric and Brett with us today? So chatty today. All right, well, I'm assuming everybody has Eric and Brett's contact information, but if not, could you guys drop it into the chat so people can grab if needed? Which would be great. Thank you both for making it today.
Yeah, and if there are other comments, I guess, that people haven't got a chance to read it and still want to, you know, we would like to kind of push this through for publication. But, you know, I guess maybe, I guess I'll leave that up to Brett, but if we want to leave till the end of the week kind of, or early next week, it'd be helpful if people still have things they want to get back to us on, so.
I will just add that we are a little bit behind the target with our publications team on the timeline on this. And so we held this up to make this meeting. And so if you do have comments, I would really actually need them tomorrow. We're under a pretty hard
Okay,
deadline.
sorry, didn't mean to misspeak about that.
That's okay. But yeah, it's going to need to, I mean, the report won't actually be posted online until July. So that is just, if you find something that really needs our attention, please let me know and I can work with our publications team. But the draft will be largely out of my hands after tomorrow. So please keep that in mind.
Last minute call, closing
Yes.
call. All right.
Well, thanks
Moving-
again.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on, so outreach and agronomy updates. Jen, I'll let you lead us off and then I'll add in some of the stuff that I've been doing.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, Barbara and I have been having a really good time. We decided to capture snapshot videos this spring of farmers planting various methods, no-till, strip-till, reduced till. So we've been all over the place getting video. Of course, planting delays have gotten in the way. So we will be meeting with those farmers at a later time and doing an interview with them. But as of right now, we want them to like us. So we're just capturing videos of what's going on. So we'll utilize that to build throughout the year, go back during the growing season, see how things are going. So it's going to be a really, really awesome series for learning and to help people network with each other. So those have been a blast to work on. And it's also, working to help me develop relationships with producers in the area as well. We've got the 3 large acreage field days coming up. I will be getting the for sure finalized dates with the delayed planting. That also made the farmers very hesitant about exactly what day they would like us to come out, just because they weren't even sure if they could plant. So it's been fun. Submitted the Clean Water Fund, so health grant, worked with Angela and some of the partners on that, Craig. So if we get that, that'll give us another avenue of funding projects. We'll be submitting LCCMR project proposal for demonstration plots, equipment modifications for farmers, and also a no-till drill for Washington. So that, yay, we can all service our producers. Yes. Yeah, and then we quit asking Paul for big favors. Working with partners, Angie, Angela, Barbara, to build relationships with Big River Farms. It's very exciting. It's going to be slow growing, but it's going to be amazing. It really is. They're all about putting their producers first, giving the producers what they need, having producers teach other producers. Perfect. Beautiful. I'm speaking monthly on WCMP radio, 100.9 country, Pine City station. So yeah, I'll start doing a call to be like, hey, you want me to give any updates? And yes, it is FM. I'm not stuck to AM. It is FM. So it's a big deal. I like the radio station, but yeah. Let's see. Oh, Barbara and I worked on the WBIF non-structural ag BMP promotional items. So once that gets approved, it moves through. We'll have something ready for, oh yeah, exactly. Ready for you guys. And then doing site visits, planning, getting funding and implementation. But yeah, this is what we're here for you guys for. So Barbara, you want to pick it up from there?
Yeah, so we wanted to be able to create a promotional flyer that Jen could then use to tell everybody about the non-structural practicing and funding that we have available. What's really nice about the program is that it does have some costs. They're a bit or has some rates that are a bit higher to hopefully incentivize. And so I have this flyer and I can send it out to everybody, and then it would be customized for each local partner. So it would always have Jennifer's information on it, but then would tag it with either the Watershed District logo or Soil and Water logo. And so we can start kind of giving those out, but definitely wanted to make sure that we got it through the approval process before we started sending it out there. Small ag workshop as well is in the works. We are trying so hard to establish a date. Ooh, it has been really difficult getting a hold of farmers, but we're actually looking at late July and hopefully being able to make that work. Angie put on the agenda that they have scheduled the Washington County workshop on the water.
Save the date, July
There
20th.
is a date, and I actually just sent out an email to our northern partners today about scheduling the next planning meeting for our northern workshop with some suggestions and invite list suggestions. So we're going to be having that upcoming meeting. It looks like it's going to be next week, just based on the doodle poll that I've seen thus far. Last updates for me, I've been working with a bunch of shoreline owners and going up to Chisago a lot in the last couple of weeks. Been doing a lot of lake association work. Jamie and I presented at a lake association meeting, and everybody thought we were the most adorable couple. It was very strange, but good times. And then we're also starting to plan a Lakeshore Realtor workshop as well. Adopt a Drain is slowly but steadily starting to grow in Chisago County. We have a great advocate and one of the Lake Association presidents who has been going around to planning commissions and actually doing the workforce and selling the program, which has been awesome. So those are the major updates that I have. Matt, you've had your hand up forever. What's up?
I just wanted to say that actually I just got an email from John in our office that our Lower St. Croix stuff is ready to go with PTM app. And so we'll schedule a meeting and start moving forward on that.
Okay.
Good to know. So that's what we have kind of going on for outreach. If anybody has any, yes, Mike.
Hey, so quick question. Could you send out the applications for the funds that would?
I can barely hear you, Mike.
You're like,
You have to get a little bit closer sometimes.
yes, that's it.
Yeah. So could I get a copy of the application to Bowser for the non-structural practices, just so I can go through it and prepare our budget, because I think we want matching dollars. And then the related request is, I'm wondering if we can get any partners who have non-structural ag practices is part of their cost share program. If you could send me a copy of your cost share policies, I would greatly appreciate it, because we need to update ours in order to incorporate these, not just structural ag, but these non-structural ag practices. And so it'd be great to be consistent with some of the partner organizations in the Lower St. Croix. So thank you.
So I'm assuming, Jen, you would be the person that would be able to help with that.
Yep. I've got a copy of the flat rate cost share contract. What do you mean you don't want to go on Bowser's website and try to figure out where that is? Sorry, Michelle, if you're still on. And then, copies of partners' cost share policies would be fantastic, because some of the discussions I've had with some of our watershed districts is that they're interested in developing an agricultural cost share policy. But we can make things so much easier if we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if I don't know if you guys want to send them to Mike and I, and then I can make sure I get them sent out to the other watershed districts, or to everybody, just in case a soil and water district wants to update their policy. We could put them in a shared location, something so that you guys have access, and you can grab a chunk from here, grab a chunk from there, and just make everybody's lives so much easier.
I just wanted to add one other thing that I forgot to mention on here at the end of the policy committee meeting Fran Miron had talked to Barbara and Jennifer and I, and he is going to be hosting the Minnesota Farm Bureau's Board of Directors meeting. They have like a quarterly or an annual meeting, and that is coming up on July 27th. And he requested that we organize a kind of special event boat workshop for them, where we could tell them about the One Watershed, One Plan work that we are doing with farmers in our area. So we may be following up. Anybody whose interest that piques, let us know. You know, we may be following up, because we'll need more than just Jennifer and I to be able to have, you know, 50 Farm Bureau Board of Directors people and be able to put on an event for them. But I think it's too good of an opportunity to pass up.
I unfortunately am going to be in Lambeau Field for the date they need. All right, so it is very nearly 3 o'clock. We have a half hour. Angie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I had a question though.
Yes.
So there are the non-structural ag and urban BMP policies that now exist. And maybe this is a question for Craig. Does our group need to approve this? Do the local boards need to approve those? Who approves those for those to go into practice?
To me, it was the understanding, and Michelle and Jennifer, please respond. It was this group needs to recommend these approvals, and then we move forward with them.
We're recommending that local boards approve them, or that the policy committee approves them?
No, they're just coming forward. It was part of the, I have to open up the, I have to open up our E-Link work plan. Give me a second.
Okay.
It just says what we will develop these and bring them forward to the steering committee for approval.
Okay. So we do need to talk about those, I think, before we move on to the projects, because we need to get those approved so that Jennifer can begin promoting them and we can begin the work on the street sweeping as well.
It says the subcommittee will establish the cost share rates, incentive rates, and the practices which will entail. The steering committee will review the proposed policies distributed to the partners for approval. The partners will not proceed with any project until the local boards adopts a non-structural land management policy. So it needs to go to the steering committee, and then if a local partner wants to adopt it, they have to adopt an approved non-structural land management policy.
Okay. Do you want me to bring those up on the screen, Jennifer? I mean, I have, no. Okay. Give me 1 second. I can pull them up. I can do it. I can do it a different way. Okay, I'm pulling up the ag one first. And I can't really speak about this since I wasn't involved in the development of it, but I will share my screen and let Jennifer or Craig or whoever knows about them or about it talk about it. Did I just freeze for everybody? Because it looked all frozen on my screen.
It is coming up. It is there.
Okay.
Craig, do you want? All right.
Yeah.
All right, I'll talk about it. Okay. Yep. So came up with this for the ag non-structural BMP policy. This way, what we can do is kind of have that bundling action. What we wanted to do was have this policy set up so that it is within line of our 10-year plan, our E-Link, WBIF, but then also affording the partners, you know, some kind of control, some kind of oversight of the projects that are happening as well. So the proposal was to divvy up initially the funds based off of percent of land of the watershed within the county. So these are the initial breaks, but we do have it written in there that if there's a partner that wants to go, you know, surpass the dollar amount afforded to them, and there's another partner that isn't spending their money, we can certainly look at, swapping some funds together so it isn't a hard line. The overall goal is to get the money spent, projects on the ground. And so what we'll do, the partners will submit a project request to Chisago as a fiscal agent, including the local approved non-structural ag B&P cost share policy. Processing these, you will submit to your own board, your own district board, to get approval of it. And our ag priority areas, we have those listed. Hoping to have those developed into those shape files just to make it super easy for staff to be able to identify, is it within the watershed of this lake or this stream? Yeah, make it easy for them. And let's see, and we can go down within it. And then we have the program requirements. It has to follow the most up-to-date GAM and the WBIF policy. But then all the practices, of course, have to follow NRCS standards and specifications. The contract will be utilizing flat rate contracts. And I'll send that out to everybody just in case, you have a fresh one handy. So whoever signs off on the design certification needs to have JAA. If you don't, submit it to someone who does have JAA, or you can utilize a TSP. The local soil and waters are responsible for providing the O&M inspections. And then we have rates and general requirements. So Ray, thank you, Michelle, thank you, Craig, and thank you other Bowser employees for humoring me on building in flexibility and granting it. So what we can do, these practices, we have to have 3-year contracts. We can't get around that. 3 years. We do have to have, if it's prescribed grazing or nutrient management, they do have to be 3 years on the same ground for, for the contract. But for cover crops and residue management, we can either move them to different fields each year, or we can do a systems approach on one field and say, well, I'm going to plant cover crops after I harvest corn this year. And then the following year, I'm going to no-till my soybeans green into it. And then the year after that, the 3rd year, I'm going to plant cover crops again. So we can have that flexibility, yay, and be able to implement a systems approach, which makes it easier for the producers to implement. It sounds scary that they'll be doing 2 different practices, but it's actually much scarier to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to do cover crops for 3 consecutive years on the same ground. How am I going to, what kind of cover crops do I want before corn? It can get hairy. That option is still there. They can still do it, but this way it provides more flexibility to make it easier to integrate into producers management. Yes, that is that. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review this. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Innovative and annoyingness prompted more discussion. I was very adamant. Does anybody have questions?
Go for it, Paul.
Okay, Paul.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Not really a question, just a comment. Jen, when we talked on Friday, you said that if in that instance where you're moving cover crops into different fields, it has to be the same acreage. Correct?
Yeah. That was what they don't want is for like our first year. Oh my gosh, we're going to do 100 acres. Yay.
And then they don't like it and go down to 50 or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted clarification, sorry.
Nope, thank you for asking, yes.
Yep, and that's a Bowser sort of request stipulation there too. And I mean, they technically could do more acres the second year if they wanted to, but if it was larger acreage. But again, your contract would be set up for a particular number of acres. So that's what they would get paid out on, is if it was 100 acres each year.
Okay. So I think, does it make sense for us to do we need to do a roll call vote, or are people comfortable just clicking on your little thumbs up to say if you approve this, and then we could talk briefly about the urban BMP? I know I hate doing the roll call vote, so I'm hoping that people are comfortable just doing the little thumbs up. All right. The notes reflect that Angie asked the group and the group approved of the non-structural ag BMP or policy. Okay, so then there is a separate one, a policy for the urban non-structural practices. And does it make sense for you to talk about this one too, Jennifer, or is this a Mike Eisensee thing?
Mike, do you want to do?
Oh, gee, I'd have to remember what it said.
Well, I have it. I have shared my screen, Mike.
Well, and Mike came up with everything, and then unfortunately I had to put it in a different format, but Mike is the master behind the beautiful color.
Yeah, so really the non-structural urban BMP policy really deals with the enhanced street sweeping, planning and implementation of that approach in urban areas. And the majority of the information was pulled from the University of Minnesota St. Anthony's Falls laboratory study that was recently completed about 2 years ago, as well as the street sweeping credit calculator that's been developed from that study and is posted in the Minnesota Stormwater Manual. So in a nutshell, we basically work with communities to develop an enhanced street sweeping plan, which identifies potential loading based on canopy cover and connectedness to our target water resource, which in this case would be the St. Croix River and direct tributaries. And then once that plan is completed, then the communities can apply for cost share up to $5,000 a year. And I'm trying to recall what the rate was. Yeah,
see,
at a rate
$100 per curb mile or $125 per curb mile.
Yep, depending on $100 per curb mile if you're just reporting the number of curb miles in the time frame that was swept, and $125 if you were actually weighing the materials and completing the NPCA credit calculator with weight states, because your phosphorus reduction credit's much greater in the calculator if you can provide that information. And like I said, up to $5,000 per year, and the rest of the information is there in the memo for all of us to refer to. And so if there are any questions?
Okay. So, seeing no questions, do we want to do another vote by thumb? Mike does. Anybody else want to put your thumbs up? Okay. Everybody is approving the urban and the agricultural non-structural, except Craig has a question. Non-structural policies. Craig, ask your question.
Oh, I just wanted clarification. Jennifer, can you just please, in one sentence or so, reiterate what we need to do now to be ready to move this forward? So do we need to make sure we have non-structural policies that are submitted to the fiscal agent and approved in order to be eligible for the funding?
Yep, exactly. And thank you. Yep, I'm going to send out an email. created just like a quick checklist of what your local cost share needs to include that, this doesn't detail. So there's just a couple of items. I've got it on the list. I'll send it to you, but yep, send your local ag cost share to the fiscal agent for approval. And Craig, next board meeting is June 14th. So when would you like those by?
Well, if they want to get them on the next board meeting, it'd be June 10th or else July 12th. So just, it can go whenever. My board meets the second Tuesday of the month. I usually do board packets the first Tuesday of the month.
Okay. I'll send out an email.
Thanks, Jen.
Did you just say June 10th or July 10th?
June 14th and July 12th. So neither.
Okay.
Maybe I did, I don't know.
Okay, so Jennifer's going to send out an email to everyone detailing what additional information local entities need to include in their policies, and the local boards need to then vote to approve those policies and then tell Craig. Correct? Did I understand right?
They put a request in. If they want the funding, they need to put a request in, a normal request.
Okay.
Can I quickly clarify? It sounds like they need to have an adopted local policy, and then their boards need to adopt this program policy. Is that correct? Or?
Let me look. It just says that the subcommittee will develop this, the steering committee will approve it, and the local boards then will adopt a non-structural policy. And so what they would need to do is put a request in to the fiscal agent for the amount of funding they're asking for. So if it's ag, it would be up to that amount in the policy. If it's urban, then that's an individual request. And then we're still waiting for the enhanced street sweeping program. So I don't anticipate any urban ones coming forward yet until EOR has the enhanced street sweeping program ready, up and running. Outside of maybe Comfort Lake, I don't know, maybe you guys have stuff you can get moving forward because you have some stuff done already.
Great, thanks, Craig.
So anybody who wants to access the funds needs to put in a request to this group or to you, Craig?
Directly to the fiscal agent,
Okay.
correct, Jennifer?
Yes, sorry.
I just put it in the chat, but so you mentioned Comfort Lake. Yeah, Wyoming is ready for us to do that study, but we're waiting on EOR. So we'll do the study, and then we'll do the study, and it'll be in accordance with the protocols. And then my board or the city of Wyoming has to adopt these urban protocols that we just approved before they get any money to do the actual street sweeping.
Actually, Emily, you guys would be the ones that can approve it because then you implement it. So the contract would be, in this situation, the contract that would be between our office and you guys. You turn around. Wyoming's in my county, so we could do it directly with Wyoming if you'd want. But since you're the partner working with them, if you'd want, we could just amend the contract we have with you. You'd have the agreement since you're working with Wyoming, and just go ahead and adopt that, and they would follow your rules.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, anybody who wants to put pressure on EOR to get that thing done, it would help all of us.
I just sent another email.
And apparently Matt Moore is calling. Okay, anything more we want to say about that before we move on to the proposed projects?
I hate consultants, and I'll call them and tell them to get it done because we're waiting on one too.
Oh dear. Yeah, and I saw Matt Downing put in the chat earlier that Middle St. Croix is also waiting on one. So yeah, we might need to leverage our collective bulliness.
If they want to keep working, they better deliver.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of partners. That's a lot of partners that are affected right now.
Otherwise, they're fired.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mike, Kitty, and the comment there too. Thanks, everybody who's doing that. I appreciate that.
So in the interest of time, let me just move it along before we move, before we lose any more partners and we don't have enough to approve these projects. So the first one let me ask if people were able to access these projects, the materials to be able to review them. I heard from a couple of people at the last minute that they weren't able to. So hopefully people were able to. And the first one that I've got on the list, and I just did this in alphabetical order, if anybody is wondering how I chose the order. So there's no favoritism at play, it is purely the way the alphabet goes. The first one here is the Big Marine boat launch. And Mike, do you want to give a quick overview of the project before, before the group asks questions and we take a vote on that?
Angie, can you put up the application and share on the screen for us?
Yes.
Or maybe actually, I think I was going to put up the concept plan.
Yeah. Do you want to share your screen or do you want me to share for you, Mike?
Either works.
How about you share your screen and then that allows me to more easily take notes in the background?
Sure. Okay, so I presented this project before, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but essentially we anticipate that the total cost for this project will be somewhere in the realm of about $35,000 to $45,000. We have an agreement for the project to be designed, but that design hasn't started yet. So really what we're looking at is a sketch on top of real survey data that was collected last year. And so the issue that we're having is that we've got these township roads that are all draining down the middle of another township road and then go across the parking lot. That really is, I can't even call it crushed limestone. It just is kind of like a dirt parking lot and discharges into Big Marine Lake. We've got numerous photos documenting enormous plumes during fairly insignificant rain events, maybe a 2-inch or a 2.5-inch rain event, and it becomes a river down these roads. So the concept behind the project is to establish a place for the water to go besides the road. And we're proposing a new vegetated swale on the north side of the township road, which that will act as pre-treatment prior to the water going into a large bioretention basin. And then that bioretention basin, instead of overflowing out across the parking lot and continuing to erode the parking lot into Big Marine Lake, will be the water for the overflow for that basin will be routed to the south to the wetland complex on the south side of Big Marine Lake. So just as a ballpark, we anticipate the road work will be somewhere in the range of $10,000, and the remaining project will be in the range of $30,000 to $35,000. We'll know more once design is completed, but we're requesting $10,000 clean water or $10,000 in grant funding for the construction of the swale, the basin, and the basin overflow, which will be about probably 35% of the total cost of the project.
Mike, do you anticipate all match funds being non-state funds?
Yep, all match funds are district funds.
Hey, Mike, I have a question on the crushed gravel. I had that kind of problem for years at my place, and about 6 years ago, I put crushed blacktop down. Was able to get that at the same price as crushed rock or crushed the limestone, and it completely eliminated my driveway washing out. Is it something that would be considered? Because a lot of it functions basically like a porous blacktop.
Yeah, so we are currently exploring alternative road bases with May Township. And crushed asphalt is not currently in our in our considerations, primarily because of just the amount of other pollutants, predominantly hydrocarbons, that come off of crushed blacktop. But we are looking, because we have a couple other projects in different locations in the watershed where we need to reduce sedimentation as in order for our stormwater practices to work. I didn't put it in as part of this project proposal because I'm not sure what the final answer is going to be working with the township, but we are exploring alternatives.
Okay.
Mike, could you remind me which grant category this would be coming out of?
Yeah, it's that this one I think fits into urban. So all the land area around this is zoned urban residential.
A5, Angie.
Yeah. I kind of have a point of clarity question for the full group that's occurred to me. Do you all want to hear all 5 projects first and then vote? Or do we want to hear a project vote in order of how they are on the agenda? Or would it feel better to hear all 5 projects first and digest that before you decide which of the 5 you want to vote to approve?
Angie, this is Jamie. Is there financial limitations that we need to be aware of that would prevent us from doing all?
I think,
Angie, you want me to take that one?
yeah, Craig, I was just going to ask you because I think we can easily do the first 4, but the 5th would require would get a financial limitation.
Correct. Angie's correct. The first 4 fit within financially. I guess that's why I asked dollar amounts. We didn't know the wetland amounts. We only have $39,531 in wetlands, and what's the budget amount for 2 wetland projects? If it's relatively within that range, then we have the funding to fund the first 4. The 5th one will have to go back to the policy committee for discussion at the July policy committee meeting, because that would require a work plan amendment, which would require recommendation by the policy committee, and then would have to go back to the local boards in August for approval, and then we would have to work with policy to get that finalized.
Emily just said that the first 2 wetland restoration projects would fit within the existing budget.
Yeah, so I think we should at least talk the first 4 collectively, and then we could talk the 5th one, but that's going to be a different animal. It kind of goes along line with the South Washington Waters District potential project.
So am I hearing, yes, we want to hear a short synopsis of all 4 projects before we vote? Or am I hearing, no, let's hear synopsis, vote, then move on to the next one?
I suggest, to be fair to everybody, we listen to all 4 because we did it alphabetically. So I think we should listen to all of them.
That was kind of my thought. It was one thing when we were only reviewing 2 at a time, but when we have a lot at a time, it feels like we might as well just hear everybody first. Okay. So then, Mike, you're still on deck because you're Goose Lake.
Yep. Thank you for putting my projects first, Angie.
Yeah, well, you chose well in the names of your project that you didn't,
All my projects are going to start with awesome. Next time it's going to be awesome Goose Lake wetland restoration.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the second project, just a quick overview. So this is a contributing area, the contributing drainage area. The wetland that we're looking at is located down here. If you can see my cursor in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, So this is 50 acres, which includes about 5 acres total of farmstead drainage that drains either to a bioretention basin that's not in this old aerial photo, or to an iron enhanced sand filter. And then this is a drain tile alignment that pulls in the remaining 45 acres into what's now installed as an iron enhanced sand filter. And that iron enhanced sand filter then discharges to the north to this 0.6 acre wetland. So as part of the performance monitoring of the iron enhanced sand filter, we have also been monitoring the outlet for the water going to Goose Lake from this wetland. So our monitoring data from 2020, which was our last really wet year, showed that our iron enhanced sand filter was working very well at eliminating phosphorus discharge that was coming in from the drain tile, as well as from the driveway here into the bioretention basin, then the iron enhanced sand filter. And so it's really the wetland was the source of the 26 pounds of soluble phosphorus that's heading out to Goose Lake. And as you know, or the statistic that Mike Trojan uses in the Pollution Control Agency's presentations is that soluble phosphorus is 5 times more reactive than total phosphorus or particulate phosphorus. And so we suspect this is our silver bullet per se, and the last practice that we're going to need to install on Goose Lake. So the proposed wetland restoration is actually really a dredging of the organic loaded soils, and then a restoration of vegetation. So in my application materials, I submitted a paper that's demonstrated that this is worked in an academic study, and we have, since the submission of this application, gone out in the field and we've done soil corings. And I think we're going to be able to very easily see where the line of the organic enriched soils end and the non-enriched soils start, because there was definite coloration variations in the field, kind of that line where the organic soils stop. But we collected those cores and we've sent them to the lab, and we're using lab analysis and soil cores to determine the final total excavation depths and amounts. And then we're planning on fall construction of this after the corn's off the field, because the organic soils are going to be taken back up and spread in the cornfield. So that's a summary of the project. If there are any questions.
What was the total grant request? Was that also $10,000? Is that what I'm remembering?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Mike, and I'm just looking, this is Craig, just looking at the approved work plan. I'm assuming this project is, you've detected since one of our target priority areas described in section 7B of our plan.
So so the wetland, the description of wetland restoration projects is either within that area or outside of that area. So there is not it's not a gatekeeper question, it's a ranking consideration question. So this is the basically, if I pull, that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that back up. I forgot about that. If I pull up this map, the priority, the third level priority for wetland restoration line runs right here. And so it's this weird situation where all of the drainage area is within the priority wetland restoration zone, but the wetland is actually outside of it if you look at it in the plan. But the policy for the wetland restorations is that it's not a gatekeeper. It's just that there's it's the lowest level priority area.
So Mike, does that mean the receiving water is in the priority area?
It is not. And so if I pull up, let me pull up that application again here. And I'm trying to remember, so I'm trying to get to that file here. Just be a second. So is everybody seeing the priority selection, the activity 6 wetland restoration file?
Yep.
Okay. So priority wetland restorations will result in measurable improvements on 5.2 or 5.3. And then it identifies the area of particular concern, but in the plan, it is wetland restorations aren't restricted to only the priority areas. Is everybody following that? Maybe Jamie, I know that you're part of the wetland committee. If, could you explain that a little bit better than I am if folks aren't quite grasping it?
No, I can't at all.
Okay.
I'll try real quick. It was a weird, because when we first put this together, that's, of course, we thought, okay, prioritization, it needs to be in there. But Mike did rightly point out that it wasn't in the plan. And so it kind of was, I don't know if a loophole is the right word, but, and I wasn't part of that. So I'm not sure why that, if that was explicitly not supposed to be in the plan or if it was missed, I'm not sure. So we could only make it a scoring, not a condition, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
I say it's priority.
All right, any other questions before I have Paul introduce the two projects from Pine SWCD? I'm gonna move us along since it's 3:30. Let's see, Paul. I am making you co-host if you want to be able to share your screen as well.
Which one am I doing first? The Hinsey.
Yes, Hinsey, because H comes before J, indeed.
Yes, it sure does. Okay, let me see. 1 second. All right. Are you guys seeing the map?
Yes.
All right. So this is the first of 2 projects we are proposing for consideration. This is a series of WSCOBs, water and sediment control basins, that are being installed on a field adjacent to Rock Lake. If you guys remember this Hinsey property, this is the same one that we did the cattle exclusion on last year. So if you look at the map, there's going to be 3 separate WSCOBs, which are those, sorry, my map is too big for the screen. The water and sediment control basins are those solid golden indicators with some mulching areas there. Essentially the water is flowing northwards down towards Rock Lake on this field. We are, we are asking for $8,400 and some change on this project for installation. And I'm trying to remember, let me bring up what the reduction numbers are. 1 second. So reduction, we are going to see estimated 20 pounds of phosphorus a year and 18 tons of sediment in the target water body, which is Rock Lake.
Paul, can you remind me now, was Mr. Hinsey, he was Ag Water Quality Certified, correct?
He's Ag Water Quality Certified as well. So that project we funded last year brought him into Ag Water Quality Certification. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Paul? Just kind of a funny aside, I was looking back at the survey results from when we had interviewed farmers, and somebody had explicitly talked about cows in Rock Lake in their open-ended survey responses from like 3 years ago. So I guess we can check off one thing that somebody complained about that we have now fixed.
Yeah, that was one that we heard about a lot.
Yep, yep.
And it's one of many situations in our county where people complain about livestock and water. So I'm glad we were able to at least cross one of those off the list.
Did you have a question, Craig? I thought
I was clapping my hands.
Oh, you were clapping. Okay. All right. So then Paul, do you want to move on to the Jones wetland?
Yes. Moment. So this next project is a wetlands project as well. This was one that was brought to our attention by John Rhines. It's as you can see, kind of a complex wetland restoration across an entire property. Brett Jones, if Angie and Barbara, if you remember when you guys came up and did a field day to look at the Wascops and Grass Waterways, this property is in between those two properties.
Okay.
So it's in that same area, Rock Creek watershed, west of I-35. It's a series of berms and prairie conversion in these areas. I have to apologize. This one is not really in my forte. John would probably have been able to better explain this one, but essentially what we're doing is creating some situations where the water can back up, scraping out organic material to allow for wetlands to be restored over a series of, or around a series of ag fields, and then some conversion back to more native cover. This one, this is a project that there's multiple partners providing non-state funds to. We're requesting $5,100. This is project is ready to go as soon as it dries out this summer. And with approval, this project can be completed 100%. Without this, there still would move forward with the project. However, it wouldn't be a completed process that they'd have to return to another year to complete. So we're requesting $5,000 to complete it all in one bang. I see Craig's hand up.
Hey, Paul, it looks like a good project. Question for you. It has a rather large pollution reduction number associated with it. 319 pounds.
Yeah, that's one I questioned too, and I haven't got back. Again, John helped me fill out that form. So I'm not sure if that is for like an overall project number, like over the lifespan of the project, or where he came up with that. He has what he uses. He used the wetland restoration. I can't remember. It's got a fancy name for it.
The wetland is the wetland effectiveness tool.
Yeah, something of that nature. So yeah, I guess that is a question that probably would be better, and that John would probably be better able to answer than me.
I see Michelle has a hand up. I was going to kind of defer that next question to her because from a fiscal age responsibility, I know wetland restorations need that pollution reduction and stuff. So Michelle, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, well, no, I had a totally different question. But yeah, I would want to make sure that that reduction estimate is got a good idea of where that's coming from. My question was around who is going to be doing the technical sign-off certification and sign-off for this project?
That would be John Rhines with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He's their wetlands expert. He has I'm pretty sure the technical.
Okay, and so I asked because I had gotten a question from earlier from I think up in Isanti about a project where John had approached them in kind of a similar scenario, and they had reached out to ask because there isn't an engineer signing off on it, and John doesn't have JAA, and so the question was around what is, what are the details of what you need for that technical certification if someone doesn't have JAA or an engineering sign off. And the sort of answer at the end of the day that I received in conversations was sort of two-part. At the end of the day, it's on the the implementing party kind of to be putting forth that, right, and to say yes, this person has the appropriate certification or what they need and will stand by it. Really a lot of it depends on the complexity of the project too, right? Kind of what can qualify as that sort of technical assurance piece of it. And I have to apologize. I'm not a wetlands person, and so it's hard for me looking at this project to really know that to the fullness.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess my response to that, or clarification for that, is if my board were to assure that John essentially has the expertise to design this, that would be qualifying. Is that kind of what you were saying?
So I would have to double check sort of what that process typically is. But it's more that, on the end of the day, the kind of project liability falls back with the implementer. And so a part of why we have the whole technical assurances requirement is both to ensure the project is going to survive, but also to help, grantees and folks to minimize some of their risk.
Their liability. Yep.
Exactly. So that's what it's in there for. Okay. And sort of, and our involvement really is, at the end of the day, can say like yes or no, but at the end of the day, it's really kind of on the grantee and the implementer to be saying, yes, we are abiding by this, and we're, abiding by the GAM and all those pieces.
I'm just taking notes. I can follow up on that and double check on that for everyone. Mike has his hand up.
Yeah, this is an awesome project. I just was curious, do you know what the total area of wetland restoration is? I was going through the documents and I didn't see it.
I think it's all like in each section. So I don't know if there's like a total sum.
Yeah, I think it would be good just to, I know for grant reporting, we're going to need that as well, the total area of wetland either created or restored. But yeah, it's obviously a lot. It's a really cool project.
Okay. Sorry, I'm opening things in the background, so I can't tell if there's any more hands that are up.
I have mine up, Angie.
Is there a hand up, you said?
Yep, I have mine. It's Craig.
Okay, go for it.
I'll have a quick question for you. I think there's a couple of questions as the fiscal agent we'd want to get answered before we move forward. I think the stuff Michelle brings up on the technical, the JAA for this thing. That was a question I had, and I think some stuff on the pollution reduction numbers. Would it be okay to table this one until I bring it back at the June steering committee and get some of those things resolved?
Yes. I know John's kind of waiting for things to dry up anyways, so I can get clarification on those questions.
I think I would feel more comfortable as a fiscal agent on that one if we could hold off for a month, get those questions And just table this one till the June steering committee. meeting.
Definitely. And I can try and see if John can come to that meeting as well. He might be better able to answer some of those questions than myself.
I'd recommend working with Michelle or your BC kind of on that job approval authority, technical assurance stuff. We need to make sure we have that covered. So I think that would be good to wait on that one.
And Paul, who's your BC? Is that Aaron?
It's Aaron.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it would be great to get her beat on that too, since I know she has more experience in sort of the ag and wetland realm than I have in my past career experience. So
and I know just kind of anecdotally, some of the northern districts have approved like private contractors to design projects and things like that. They may not have JA or anything like that, but the boards essentially pass a motion saying that they assure that this person knows what they're doing, and that's been good enough. But I'll follow up with Aaron and follow up with you, and we'll get that sorted out.
that sounds great. Thanks.
Yep.
Matt Moore, did you have your hand up? It looks like you do.
Yeah, Craig, this sounds like a good opportunity for shared services, because we're gonna come to you for some shared services. And I'm just wondering, now's a good time to figure out how we do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a very good point too, Matt. So Paul, we have that A9 activity where we have $30,000-$40,000. So I mean, if worst case scenario, we need to bring in, a partnering engineer, just do a little bit of work to kind of review what U.S. Fish and Wildlife is doing to sign off on. That's one avenue. Also, you can put that request in at the same time.
No, that would be great. One of our biggest limiting factors since forever is our lack of capacity for some of these things. So I really heavily rely on some of these outside sources to develop these projects. So anything that we can do to move it along would be great.
Might be something if you could reach out to Jay Riggs and see if Rebecca has time just to review something like that, or the right Soil and Water Conservation District over there. They have an engineer that's a little more ag background. You might want to reach out to Mike over there at the right Soil and Water Conservation District. He might be willing to review this and give the sign off on it also. So those are all things to work with your BC and with Michelle on.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, Matt, for bringing that up.
Rebecca from WCD has been doing a number of projects for Chisago SWCD. So there's already a precedent set for her doing projects outside our county.
Correct. And so is the right SWC. They partner with me with Isanti SWC too.
And is Isanti still on here? Because I was going to say, if you're kind of exploring some of these routes for this wetland project, if they're interested in, opening back up that conversation around the one that John approached them about in Isanti, that might, be worth having that same conversation or on with that project too.
Yeah, I haven't heard from John.
Okay.
But he said, I think just the issue was they wanted to get this thing on the ground. Similar to this project, they didn't need this funding for the project to happen. I just know from my point of view, it was like a really big watershed that was coming into this one area. I'm sure John knows what he's doing or whatever, but the liability part of it kind of just made me think, we probably should have a professional engineer take a look at this if we are going to pass it through. But I haven't heard from John yet this spring. So.
Okay.
Okay. Am I understanding the group's preference correctly that we would like to take a vote on Big Marine, Goose Lake, and Hinsey, table Jones, and then maybe if we have time left here, an introductory statement about the Sunrise River, but not necessarily take any action on that one today? Is that what people want to do? Okay.
I support that if Comfort Lake is okay with that. I want to defer that to Emily.
I missed the part about not voting on the Sunrise River one. Just my one concern with timing, I think it could still work, is that if approved at this amount, we'll want to come to the policy committee meeting. So I'll have to at least know by that July policy committee. But if we are meeting in June, then that gives us a month.
Okay.
So I think that would still work, but Yeah, if that's what people want to do.
Well, I think, Emily, is there any, after our conversation on the phone the other day, is there any reason to move the Comfort Lake project forward today? I mean, we can't move the project forward because it has to go back to the policy committee. I mean, that's at the end of the day. So that we're kind of bound on that last Monday of July or fourth Monday of July meeting with PC to bring this forward like South Washington Water District did last month.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to have some indication just for my own planning purposes. If it's not going to go, then I won't, spend any more time pursuing that. But yeah, if we don't get the actual action today, yeah, that still works with the timeline. It could happen in June, and then July policy committee meeting, go out to partner boards.
I guess if it's okay with Comfort Lake, we have two members here. Because we're lacking people here, I mean, we're down to a skeleton crew of us left. I guess I'd recommend if we could table that one and hopefully have a better turnout, maybe put it towards the top of the agenda, both of these items, since they were tabled this meeting. Is that okay with Comfort Lake?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, of those of us that are here then, do we want to move forward on taking a vote on starting with Big Marine and see if I can in the next 5 minutes get us through voting on the first three projects that we heard? So Big Marine then, of everybody that is here, do you want me to do a roll call vote, or do you want to either put a thumbs up or a thumbs down emoji and then I can grab the votes from that? Jamie's leaving.
We just need to make sure we get one vote per organization and it's only the partners. So just, no offense, Jennifer or Barbara, but there's certain people who can't vote.
I know, I'm like, almost like, is there enough people left to even do a vote on these projects anymore now that we've gotten down to where we are right now?
Just move the slate, Angie.
Yeah, move the slate, move all three.
Done.
Okay, let's just do it as a vote for all three then, unless somebody abstains.
Can I ask one quick
favor.
question? Just about the WASCOBs. Could Paul just speak a little bit more about the upland practices, the no-till or what's being done to stop erosion uphill of the WASCOBs?
Yeah, so there's going to be no-till, or Randy does a lot of no-till. I think we're encouraging him to do no-till in that field as well to further implement it. I think it's been a practice he's rotated in and out of that field in the past. So I guess I'm not sure. And he does participate in, or he does do cover crops as well. I'm not sure if that was a field he did cover crops in last year or in subsequent years.
But as being ag water quality certified.
He does, yeah. I mean, he has his own no-till drill that he bought. So I know he does it. I just don't know the acreage and what his overall rotation is on those practices.
And he's working, I'm assuming, with both, it looks like NRCS and with Ryan Clark with the ag water quality certification on his conservation plan on that field.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, just because you want to definitely address that so the WASCOBs don't just fill up. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, is there anybody who would like to speak against funding any of these three projects? Okay. Then,
We're all in favor, Angie.
I know, I'm
Next
adding.
item.
Huh?
Well,
Next item.
hold on, I don't know if we have enough. Hold on.
Well,
How many
that's
do
what
we
I am
have?
trying to figure out right now, Craig, because I'm like, who all is left? We've got Comfort Lake, Forest Lake, Chisago, SWCD, Pine, SWCD.
Do we have 8?
We still have Isanti, SWCD. If either Barbara or I took the place of WCD, we could have WCD in the room.
Well,
So
Angie, you can.
4, 5, 6, 7, then we'd be at 9. I think we have Comfort Lake, Forest Lake, Chisago, SWCD, Chisago County, Pine SWCD, South Washington, Carmar, Anoka SWCD, Isanti, and WCD. 9 out of 17. That gets us
There,
above
it's
50%.
approved.
It gets us above 50%. Does it need to be above 60%, Craig?
I'm trying to look quick. I apologize. I'm looking through
Yeah.
it just says 2/3 vote for the work plan. It doesn't say, it says majority for everything else.
So that gets us to majority. We all say yes. That gets us to 9 out of 17.
Angie, what I guess I recommend is we have 9 out of, we have a majority, but if you can review the JPA to make sure that we meet the requirements.
Okay.
We'll need to review that, and if we have to bring it back, we'll have to come back in June with these policies to get it voted on.
Okay.
It sucks, but that's where it goes. You know, it talks a lot about 2/3 of the members present, and so we just had 100% of the members present. Yeah, here it says, the advisory committee, if on a vote of 2/3 of the members present. So I think we're okay, but we'll review that a little more, and we'll let you know if we have to do something different.
Okay. Okay. Sorry to be burning the candle wick till the final minute of the meeting and to have to put off the Jones Wetland and the Sunrise River project till next month. I think this does highlight a question for me though of, as we start bundling a lot of projects together to review all at once, I even predicted it coming to this one, and even 2 hours wasn't enough. So I can predict that we're going to need to think about this if we bundle projects and are only meeting 3 times a year, that these might need to be longer meetings in order, or else we might need to take away any other meeting business and just only do project approvals at those meetings. So
Yeah, or maybe the projects are just at the beginning of the meeting.
yeah. So I think we might need to start kind of alternating, like having 1 month be a meeting where we talk about all the other stuff, and then the next month be a project approval meeting, something like that, because I hate to have our meetings only approve projects and we never get the chance to talk to one another about everything else we do together.
But that's our plan moving forward, is only do this a couple times a year, 2 or 3 times a year.
So maybe as we start doing that, that gives us the opportunity that we talk about other business at other meetings. Sorry, the school bus just pulled up. Okay, I guess I'm adjourning. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Angie.
you.
Thanks, everyone.